Can you fuel a half marathon with a potato instead of a gel? What about running fasted at 5 a.m.? Is that smart or a setup for burnout? And do supplements like collagen, creatine, and turmeric actually do anything? Today's episode is all about your questions real, unfiltered, and incredibly relatable nutrition, hydration, and fueling challenges that runners face every day. We're talking about ideal running weight and why there's no one size fits all, eating clean versus convenience, what to eat right after a 5K effort before your cool down, and yes, what to do if you hate bananas or protein shakes, but still want to recover like a pro. We'll get into protein needs for different training days, hydration options beyond water, and the real deal with electrolyte tabs like Nuun or LMNT, and whether a Kava drink can actually replace your nightly glass of wine. And don't miss the lightning round at the end. I'm putting our resident sports dietitian to the test with a rapid fire answer to your burning questions on meal timing, fasting before runs, and her top 3 go-to meals and snacks for performance and recovery. So whether you're fueling for a 5K or a marathon, trying to build muscle without meat, or just want to stop guessing about your nutrition, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Brooke Czarnecki is a registered dietitian nutritionist, host of the Actively Fueled podcast, and our resident sports dietitian on our Spark Healthy Runner team, who is going to answer your listener submitted questions. If you're new to as a listener and you haven't heard the other 10 episodes that Brooke has been on, you can find them all in the link I have for you in the show notes. Brooke, what's going on? Thanks so much for coming back on the show. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Dwayne. It's always such a pleasure to be here, and I'm very, very excited about all these questions. There's some really great questions on here to cover today.
So am I. So we're going to dive right into these listener submitted questions. I have grouped the questions into 3 different buckets. We're going to go nutrition first, kind of fueling, then hydration, and then supplements. So the first nutrition or fueling question that we have received is, I would like to know if there are any recommendations on one's ideal running weight. I know there are general guides online, but everyone is different and there is not a one size fits all.
Yeah, so this person, answered their question really in their own question of just it is very individualized and there is no one size fits all approach. However, I do like to give a general symptom list, if you will, of things that we know like are, green flags for are you at your ideal running weight? I'll also maybe provide some like red flags that maybe you're not at your ideal running weight as I answer this question. So I like to focus more on how you're feeling and the habits and behaviors that you have surrounding your nutrition versus the number on the scale, because the number on the scale only tells us so much, right? So, what I mean by this is you might be at your ideal running weight if you feel energetic on your runs. You're able to get you through your long run without bonking. You feel like you have good turnover in your legs. Your legs aren't feeling super heavy the majority of the time. And yes, of course, we're going to have runs that don't feel great. That's just like the nature of being a runner. But we shouldn't be feeling like low energy, completely depleted every single time we go out for a run, or the majority of the time, right? So energy during runs is like a really good indicator of where we're at nutritionally and also where we're at with our weight. Another one is having stable energy throughout the day. So if you are somebody that completes your run and then it just like completely lays you out for the rest of the day, or you're, again, even during your runs, or if you feel like I'm just like up and down all the time with my energy throughout the day, that could be an indicator that maybe fueling isn't optimal and therefore our weight is not optimal as well. Another one is sleeping well. A lot of people underestimate the power of what our sleep can tell us and how that ties into our overall health. And again, notice how these aren't necessarily exactly tied into your weight, but they can give us ideas of what's going on into your long-term and overall health. If you feel like you have really restless sleep, you struggle to fall asleep, or you're noticing that you're waking up more often throughout the night, might be an indication that we're not where we need to be nutritionally, and therefore potentially our weight isn't where it needs to be either. Other things to analyze: are you getting injured frequently? Maybe it's the same recurring injury. Maybe you're getting bone stress injuries a lot of the time. You feel like you can't get through a training block. Maybe you're not maintaining, if you're a menstruating athlete, maybe you're not maintaining that menstrual cycle, or you're noticing some irregularities in that menstrual cycle. Having bowel movements daily is really important indicator of where our nutrition status is, where our health status is, and mood. This is another big one too. I have a lot of athletes tell me, I can't believe the difference in my mood, whether it's decreased anxiety, decreased depression, just increased levels of, being content when they're adequately fueling their body, they're getting enough, their body's getting what it needs nutritionally. And notice too that your body is going to fluctuate in weight over time, depending on your season of life, depending on your training cycle. It's not uncommon for people who are training for longer distances like the marathon, ultra marathons, things like that, to carry a little bit more weight. You haven't done anything wrong. It's your body's way of adapting to that training load, and it can actually be very supportive for your training. So that's why, the weight conversation is very nuanced. It can be tricky, but when we focus on the behaviors, the habits, and how we're feeling, that can give us a better idea of, am I at my happy weight, I like to call it, or not?
Nice. So there's a lot more factors that go into whether or not just weight relates to how well you will perform as a runner, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. And there's a lot online too of just, I like that we're seeing a more diversity in bodies in the running community, and it's you can be a runner at any body size, right? And so that's what's really important, to focus on the behaviors, focus on the controllables. I always say to my athletes, control the controllables. Our weight isn't always one of those things that we can control. So what else outside of that can you control to help you feel your best?
Yeah, and I think a lot of runners too might go to the assumption that it was because they were, let's say, 10 pounds lighter and why they ran faster 10 years ago without thinking about number one, age, number two, life stressors, right? Like now maybe they're post kids, right? And their life looks a lot different than when they were in their 20s and they were just worried about themselves and maybe their partner, and their training probably looked a lot different. But I feel like there are a lot of runners out there that perseverate about that number on the scale and are just like, well, I'm slower because I'm heavier now. And then they go to the mindset of like, I need to lose this weight in order to actually run faster. But from what I'm hearing from you, that's not necessarily actually going to be the fix, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's really hard to have the focus on weight and sports performance, because oftentimes they're two conflicting principles. So a lot of that weight loss advice or weight management advice is not applicable to helping you fuel your next half marathon, marathon, whatever you're training for. So it can get tricky, and it's nuanced. This isn't, again, it's not a one size fits all. So that's why the conversation is more than just like, here's these bullet points of what it means, essentially. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay. Getting to the next question here is they want to know your thoughts on fueling with real food versus gels. So this runner is into eating clean, unprocessed food, and she's trying to limit her exposure to plastics and microplastics. And also, she'd rather eat a potato or something delicious instead of gagging down a gel if her stomach is willing. And she has seen people post online their methods of fueling with real food instead of gel. So she finds it interesting and would love to hear your take on this.
Yeah, so you can fuel however the heck you want. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You can fuel with all gels. You can fuel with all, the crackers, the pretzels, the potatoes. The pitfalls I see to people that are trying to fuel with the more unprocessed, and I put unprocessed in quotes because it's, again, a more nuanced conversation there. But if you're going to be fueling with things like that aren't the gels, that aren't the sports products, the problem that people run into is, one, volume. So they need to eat a lot more volume of food to get the amount of carbohydrates that they need to support their training. So remember, for runs under 2 hours, we're aiming for at minimum 30 to 60 grams of carb. For running over 2 hours, we want to be in that 60 to 90 plus gram per hour category. And so 90 grams of carb coming from potatoes, crackers, tortillas, like whatever you're trying to use is a lot of food going into your body, and you're you're going to be feeling like you're eating a lot of food. So if you can find a balance with that, it can work just fine. But that is one of the problems that I see with it, or one of the issues people run into it with it. The other thing is fiber. As we know, when we're running, we don't want a whole bunch of fiber going into our gut. It can cause diarrhea, abdominal pain, cramping, all that nasty stuff that we don't want to happen when we're running. So limiting your fiber can be trickier with, choosing the potatoes, the non-sports branded products. So just being aware of how much fiber you're intaking can be helpful with that as well, if you're noticing that your stomach is giving you a hard time with it. The last thing I'll throw in, because I'm a dietitian, is food safety. I am the food safety queen. I worry about people that pack their potatoes or their mashed potatoes, put them at the end of a race, or they're stashing their food, and it's just like bacon in the sun for like hours at a time. I'm like, what the heck's grown in there? So I get nervous about like the food safety aspect of it too. But if you can find a way to do it where you're not going to give yourself foodborne illness, like go for it. But that's like those are the three things I would say just be aware of. And then just understanding too that everything is about balance, right? So it's okay to have the gels and the chews if you want to, and mix it with a little bit of, the quote unquote real food options too. That's totally fine. You're going to be limiting your exposure to those plastics anyway if you're, just having a little bit less of those things. But truthfully, I don't worry too much about the plastic exposure from gels and chews during exercise, and those kinds of things. But yeah, to each their own. We all limit our plastic in different ways. But I just want to make sure that you're fueled for your running.
Right. So it sounds like the biggest challenge is just getting in an adequate amount of calories, carbs during the run, that it does become quite challenging. And it might be too much food for someone to literally consume and digest while they're running at a hard effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I read this question initially, I just thought of the Napoleon Dynamite scene where he has tater tots in his pocket, and I was like, this is what some ultra runners do, road runners do too. They'll just like stuff, their little potatoes or their French fries in their pocket, and it just reminded me of Napoleon Dynamite. It's like classic.
All right. Next question here. I know most folks here are interested in longer runs, but we do hear that training for shorter races can be useful between marathon training cycles. And that's where this runner's at right now. And this is one of our Healthy Runner Academy members. So she's kind of periodizing her training, right? So, which I love. I have been fueling more before my 5K runs, which is really helping. But my question is, what is best to eat, if anything, in the 10 to 15 minutes after a hard 5K effort before a 3 to 4 mile cool down run? So she's kind of doing like a warm up, doing the 5K race, and then doing 3 to 4 mile cool down. So it adds into like a long run for like the weekly run. So just to kind of give you some context there, guys. And obviously drinking water and electrolytes are important, but is it important to eat something as well, or take another gel? Question mark. Or how about a granola bar? Question mark. Or half a bagel, part of a protein shake, an orange. So she's given us many options here. Are any of these options better than others? Please don't say bananas, as they are my least favorite food. Or is it okay to just wait until the cool down, or until after the cool down run?
Yeah, so this all comes down to timing. If you know that your run is going to be over an hour, yeah, we want to bring some fuel along with us. And I think having that time where you have like that 10 to 15 minutes of a cool down before you go into your cool down can be a really easy way for you to get some fuel in, so that your cool down doesn't feel like a death march, right? So if you're going over the hour, which it sounds like you probably are in this situation, yes, definitely bring along some fuel. It can be a gel, it can be the granola bar, the half a bagel, the orange. Definitely don't do the protein shake, because that's going to sit really heavy in your stomach, cause some GI distress. We want to focus on those like easily digestible carbs. You could even get some carbs through like a sports drink if you wanted to too, with along with your electrolytes. So anything that's going to be high in carb, low protein, low fiber, low fat will be really effective for that. And I always tell people too, like, we have these guidelines, right? But if you feel like you need something and you're not going to be over that hour, there's nothing wrong with eating something. And I always say, if you feel like you need something, you probably do. So if you're questioning it, just try it as an experiment, see how you feel. And you're probably going to feel a lot better with just a little bit more fuel on board. So it doesn't have to be much. Other examples might be like an applesauce pouch or fruit snacks or graham crackers. Really anything that's simple carbs you can bring along with you.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great question, and it applies to, I think, a lot of us, because when you think of racing a 5K, you're not thinking of fueling during the 5K, and especially for this runner who's finishing in like 21 minutes, you don't need to fuel during it. But I think of it also not even so much like, yes, those 3 to 4 miles cool down after may feel like a death march. So it won't feel great for you to do it. But I think of it, Brooke, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is almost think about the recovery from the hard race effort that
Absolutely.
you just did, right? Like, so you don't want to like totally deplete your body. And then that's going to actually mess your recovery up because, like this runner, she's continuing her training into the next week. And it's not like there's a big, like a half marathon or a marathon, training block where, you get this downtime after. She's jumping right back into the next week's training. So I think of it as like, yeah, you definitely have to fuel with any of those options that you mentioned for those cool down miles. And then after they're done, even more important, just like every long run, but the fact that you went hard race effort 9 out of 10, maybe a 10 out of 10, like toward the end of that 5K race, like you're going to need that fuel afterwards just to help with that recovery process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great point. And I think that, we always want to mention how important fueling is during, not only for how you're feeling during, but after as well. That can be the biggest game changer for people is like, wow, yeah, I recovered way faster. I'm not, sore for 3 days after. My energy's better. I wasn't laid out with a headache and, had to take a nap for 4 hours after that effort. So it can be, and again, it doesn't have to be much, right? So starting simple and just figuring out the fuel plan that works for you can be really, really helpful and a game changer for your running.
And I'll just lastly add anecdotally, I've had that huge mindset shift in my training personally, in the past year where, yes, I don't feel like eating. I don't want to eat because you're not going to feel it, but you really need to get those easily digestible carbs in you. And then when you're done with the run totally, get that protein in you because recovery, honestly, I've never felt the best 3 or 4 hours after a long run, or I did a 4 mile race this year as part of a long run and half marathon training where I did miles after it. And then my half marathon as part of marathon training, I did the same thing. It was like a total of 18 miles that day after a half marathon race where I still had to go and run 3 miles after the race was done. And needed to do the same thing. But yeah, the more the better you can get in you guys, and you're going to feel so much better after that effort hours later. But then also, I noticed the next day, like I
Yes.
feel so much better because I think it did help that like stimulate that recovery process right away that our bodies really need after those efforts.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing your experience, Dwayne. And that's helpful for people to hear.
All right. So, protein types. Next question. I primarily eat lean protein sources such as seafood, Greek yogurt, and peanut butter powder. Are there any drawbacks to not eating red meat?
Yes, iron deficiency. I am a huge red meat advocate. And the reason for this, and the more that I learn about the functional nutrition aspect of this, the more into red meat I am. So for a couple different reasons. Iron is found in the highest amounts and is the most bioavailable to our body, just meaning we absorb the most iron from meat sources and specifically those red meat sources. So your red meats, your organ meats are going to be where you find the most iron for our body. Um, Women need at least 18 milligrams a day. Men need, I think, 8 to 9 milligrams per day. Athletes potentially may need more, just given how much energy we're expending on the body. Just to give you rough estimates, but needless to say, iron is found in highest amounts in those red meat sources. So that's why I am a huge red meat advocate and red meat fan. That's the first reason. The second reason is we also need key minerals from red meat to prevent iron deficiency. So the one that sticks out the most to me is vitamin A. So we need vitamin A in the retinol form. The retinol form is only found in animal based sources. And red meat happens to have the highest amounts of that retinol form of vitamin A. So, without enough of that vitamin A, we aren't going to be able to metabolize iron properly, which is where we see a lot of folks get into trouble with like my iron is normal, but my ferritin is low. And that's because there's a very specific process that's needed to translate iron into ferritin, which is the storage form of iron. And that's where we see that chronic like low ferritin issue. So, vitamin A is one of them. And then the other nutrients that aren't necessarily specific to red meat, but I think is just helpful to know as we're talking about the conversion of iron into ferritin is copper and magnesium. Zinc also plays a role, but it's because if we have too much zinc, it depletes copper, and then that leads to the iron deficiency in of itself. So, a couple different ways to approach this question. But the more that I learn about iron and ferritin and nerd out on it, the more I'm like, we really got to make sure we're getting some, red meat sources. And for people who aren't into red meat, maybe they're vegetarian, if they can, supplement or consider an organ-based type supplement and they're okay with that ethically, that can be really helpful for people to, raise their ferritin levels. But I don't recommend that unless you're working with a dietitian, so you can get, the correct information from them for what's going to work for you. But yes, there are drawbacks to not eating red meat, namely the iron deficiency part of it.
Well, super informative. And if you guys are getting value from this, by the way, please like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on the podcast, like make sure you follow, rate, and review the show. This will just allow us to continue putting this content together for you so you can get stronger, run faster, and enjoy lifelong injury-free running. Thank you in advance for doing that. Hey runner, want 4 free gels? Did you know that proper nutrition is one of the 6 steps to growing in your running journey? So if you've never eaten anything for your runs, or you've tried other gels, but you just didn't like the taste or quite frankly, the texture, or you always get stomach discomfort whenever you try to fuel your workouts, it's time to give UCAN a try. It is the fuel that allowed me to crush a 23-minute marathon PR, and UCAN is what powered my 48.6 magical miles in Disney as part of the Dopey Challenge. The top U.S. marathon runners, whether it's Emily Sisson, Sarah Hall, or Emma Bates, all use UCAN to power their workouts and their runs, but it's not just for elite runners. As a running physical therapist and coach, it is my go-to recommendation for the athletes I work with. Now, UCAN is offering our Spark Healthy Runner community an exclusive chance to try 4 Edge samples for free. All you do is pay the cost of shipping. So just head over to ucan.co/healthy runner to claim this offer, or just drop UCAN in the comments and I'll shoot you the special link. And while you're over there, you might as well grab a box of energy bars. Salted peanut butter is my favorite, and I have it after my runs and before my strength sessions. As always, let's maintain a strong mind, a strong body, and let's just keep on running, powered by UCAN. And next question that we have submitted is related to protein. And they've heard widely different amounts recommended. I am a 47-year-old woman and would like to increase my weekly mileage to 30 plus from my current weekly mileage of 20 to 25 miles per week. I also go to 2 to 3 strength training classes per week at my local gym and try to do 2 spin classes a week. Are my needs different depending on what type of training I'm doing on a particular day? I know I shouldn't run fasted, but I struggle to eat anything before my early morning runs. Any suggestions? How much should I eat before a 5-mile run versus a 7-mile versus a 10-mile? Do I need to eat before a run less than 5 miles? So we got a bunch of questions here for you to tackle, Brooke. What do you say?
Yeah, so we'll start with the protein question first. Protein needs certainly shift with activity and age, just like our carbohydrates do as our training increases, right? As our training increases, we need more carbohydrates. So the protein conversation is always very tough to answer in a generalized setting, but I do like to give a range that can be helpful for you to calculate on your own. Typically, I'm aiming for somewhere between 1.6 to 2.0 grams per kilogram. I'll show the kilogram calculation in a second of body weight per day, and that's 1.6 to 2.0 grams per kilogram of body weight per day. For this person in particular, given her age and the level of activity, I would probably put her on the higher end of this range. And this is also dependent on what her actual weight is, too. So you kind of have to take what I'm saying with a grain of salt because I don't know your needs individually and what your weight is individually. But just to give you a starting point, at least. And to get that kilogram calculation, you take your weight in pounds and you divide it by 2.2. So you have that number, then you multiply by 1.6, you multiply it by 2.0, and you've got your nice little protein range. I do find that people are trying to overconsume protein because they're seeing things like you've got to eat 1 pound per, 1 gram per pound of body weight. That's usually way too much for people. And so again, you have to find what works for you. But given that you do want to run, 30 plus miles a week, you go to strength training, you go to spin classes, you're highly active, we want to make sure we're getting enough protein and also carbs and also fat and just overall calories. So yes, protein's important. I would argue that carbs are even more important. And then to go into the second part of the question, which was, do I need to eat? Well, do I need to eat before runs? Yes, you need to eat before runs, all runs. It can be different based on how far you're going. If it's an easier run, a shorter run, I'm thinking anything under like 45 minutes, you're just going out for like, zone 2, it's super easy. You can do, 30 grams of carb before you head out. That could be in the form of liquids if you feel like it's really hard for you to eat something in those early morning runs. I always tell my clients, I don't mean to be like a hard ass about this, but like if you're finding time to run, you have to find time to eat. And waking up too late is not an excuse not to fuel your runs in the morning. So you can be, having a graham cracker, a sip of Gatorade, like a glass of Gatorade, a glass of your favorite, carbohydrate containing beverage before you, like as you're walking out the door. There's ways to get fuel in your body for those early morning runs. It just takes a little bit of practice. And if you're somebody that has not fueled your runs before in the past, starting with something super small can be helpful. And then you kind of work your way up to that 30 grams. So like half of a banana, half a piece of toast to start. And then we work up to things like a full banana, a full piece of toast to get to that 30 grams. And then for things like those longer runs, over an hour, maybe the intensity is a little bit higher. We want to look for at least 60 to 90 grams of carb before. So that's going to require that you probably get up a little bit earlier so you have time to settle. But that would be like a bagel, a full bagel, or maybe some oatmeal with a banana on the side, oatmeal with a glass of juice. So you can see how, as your runs get longer, you need to be fueling appropriately and adequately with those carbs. But the emphasis here is those quick, easy digesting carbs before you head out.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you very much for answering that. And last nutrition fueling question that we did receive is, I was a pretty strict vegan for about 15 years, but I have started eating some Greek yogurt and the occasional egg, maybe 1 or 2 a week. As a general rule, I almost never make a protein shake or smoothie because when I look at the calorie load, it seems like more than I need. I would rather eat real food. Do you have suggestions for things to eat for people that don't like protein powders?
Yeah, so congrats on eating some yogurt and eggs. I think that can be really helpful in helping get your protein needs up. And I'm assuming that what you are asking in this question is just how do I get more of these protein sources without having to turn to a protein powder? Um, and the other caveat, this little side note here, I am questioning what you're believing is like a high calorie load because I do think a lot of athletes underestimate how many calories they need. And I always say like don't be shy from, 3 to 400 calorie snacks. A lot of folks tell me like, well, I'm nervous to eat anything over 100 calories or 200 calories for a snack. But that's just not adequate for athletes. So don't be afraid of those higher calorie protein shakes, things like that, higher calorie meals. Oftentimes we're actually needing those things as athletes. So I am, just questioning like what you're believing as a high calorie shake or smoothie and just challenging you on that a little bit. So that's the first thing. Second thing is different protein suggestions for somebody who doesn't like a protein powder. And I tried to think of things that aren't, like super intensive in terms of preparation, but soy milk can be really great replacement for people that are plant-based. Soy milk is the most nutritionally similar to cow's milk and where you're going to get, a decent amount of protein, carbs, calories, and those minerals. Whereas like almond milk is basically just water. You're not going to get much from an almond milk versus a soy milk. So soy milk can be really helpful for a lot of folks. And then, throwing hemp hearts on top of your already prepared meals can be a really easy way to like increase protein automatically. Tofu, you don't technically have to cook tofu, and I eat tofu raw because I have a small toddler who eats tofu raw, so I eat tofu raw. Edamame is a great snack, also a great protein source for those vegan athletes. And your classic nuts, seeds, just throwing extra things on. When you're plant-based, it really comes to the extras. Like what can we just throw on top of things to just a little bit of protein, even if it's 3 to 4 grams, that does add up throughout the day. Your whole grain options, which if you're a vegan for 15 years, you probably know all of these tips and tricks already, but just to give you a little refresher. And those are the things that immediately come to mind for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you. Very, very helpful tips there. So next, guys, we're going to shift gears a little bit and go to hydration and supplement questions that we have for Brooke. But before we do that, I want to let you know that today's episode does include a freebie download, which is our Spark Healthy Runner Nutrition Blueprint. And Brooke has created this amazing resource for you on what you should eat as a runner. And this blueprint lays out how to fuel as a runner so you don't have to feel sluggish during your runs or worse, bonk during a race. And what's included in here is top 5 nutrition tips for runners, nutrition basics for running, the ultimate snack guide, and long run fueling strategies. And the best part is it's all free, and we have it for you in a PDF download that you can save for future reference or print it out as a visual reminder. Grab your nutrition blueprint download to run your best at learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/nutrition. All right, shifting gears to the hydration category. So hydration wise, aside from good old fashioned water, are there any beverages that you would recommend as great for refueling?
Yeah. So anything with a little bit of electrolytes in it is going to be great. There's hundreds of electrolyte powders and things on the market now. A few of my favorites that I use are Liquid IV and Element, and there are, like I said, many others out there. I also love Scratch. Those are 3 of my favorites. One thing I do want to include though is I have been loving my mineral mocktails lately. As a pregnant woman, I have been craving just like different things other than water. And mineral mocktails that I make include coconut water, my favorite electrolyte powder. So I'll do like half of an element of the raspberry element. I'll add like a splash of juice in there. And the reason that I use coconut water specifically is because there's potassium in it. And so I'm going to get a good mix of potassium, sodium from my element, and some magnesium from the element as well. All of those things are great for recovery because we're replenishing those electrolytes that were lost during our runs. So if you find yourself like having lots of headaches or you get pretty crampy after your long runs, try to incorporate more electrolytes. Maybe incorporate more of that coconut water for the potassium, and the electrolytes that include magnesium as well to help with the cramping. But I'm trying to think of potassium, sodium, magnesium when I'm thinking of my mineral mocktails. But those are something that I have been trying lately, and they do actually give me lots of energy. So like helps prevent that mid-afternoon crash and all that good stuff. So if you feel like you're somebody that needs a 2 p.m. coffee, but you don't want to then mess up your sleep, try the mineral mocktail. It can be a big game changer for a lot of folks.
Interesting. Okay. Next question kind of relates to similar is I've been using Nuun to replace my electrolytes that I lose during my runs, but have been hearing a lot about Element or LMNT for those who've never used it before. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think a lot of people need more than just Noon, to be honest, with their electrolytes during their runs. And some people don't quite need an element. So Noon is like the bottom of, sodium needs. Element is on top of that higher sodium needs. So it can be a great electrolyte replacement. I find Element more helpful outside of runs, so like before your runs or after your runs, just because it is straight electrolytes. There's no carbohydrate in there. So I like Element for mostly outside of runs. I do know athletes that use it during, and it works great for them. But just make sure you're able to get your carbs too. I mean, that goes for Noon as well. Noon is pretty low carb as well. But yeah, I think that's the short of it. I think yes for Element, just have to make it work for you.
All right. Excellent. So now let's go to the supplement category here. Can you address supplements like collagen and creatine? Would you recommend them? And if so, are there any particular brands that you like?
So we'll start with collagen. Collagen is something that I take it or leave it. I say save your money on it. It's not something that I recommend to people, but if they like it and they use it, I just make sure that it's third party tested so that we know we're getting a high quality product. So looking for that NSF symbol or the informed sport symbol on the actual product itself. The research is mixed at this point, so I don't feel confident saying yes or no or a hard yes on collagen. But it's not going to do a detriment to you either if you want to try it and if it works well for you. So that's a maybe. Creatine, yes, for sure. I highly recommend creatine, especially for middle aged women. There is so much research on creatine. It's one of the most highly researched supplements out there, and it's a very safe product. There's also a lot of research now outside of helping to support recovery and muscle turnover and regrowth and things like that. We're also seeing a lot of benefits with brain health, neurological health, nerve health, and all these like other things outside of sports performance. So, if people are again willing and wanting to spend a little bit of extra money on creatine, I say heck yes. There's no downsides to it, and you can take it long term. The dosing for creatine is 3 to 5 grams per day. And in order to see the best benefit for creatine, it has to be taken consistently. So it can't just be like whenever I feel like it or every other day. Like it really should be taken every day, or else you might as well just like throw your money in the trash. So brands that I like, again, really any brand that is third party tested and it's creatine monohydrate and it's only the creatine. Like, don't get one that has zinc in it or B vitamins, like just creatine monohydrate in that 3 to 5 grams. Usually it's a scoop that you can throw into a beverage. There's also gummies out there now too. But Thorne is a great brand, and Pure Encapsulations is a great brand. And Thorne and Pure Encapsulations across the board for like anything, because they are third party tested, are reputable brands.
Yeah, I didn't even know you were going to say that. And actually, I just started using Thorn probably like 4 months ago. My coach had recommended, and she's a professional runner. So, yeah, it is all like third party tested. And, you kind of can trust like what you're getting in the supplement is actually what you're getting. So, yeah, I would highly second that. And I would definitely second your thoughts on creatine in terms of it being like true tried tested, well researched. And collagen is one of those interesting things I'm starting to learn a little bit more. I know there is some recent literature that's come out with tendinopathies that I'm very
Yes.
interested in that I need to dive in a little deeper for my folks with Achilles tendinopathy, hamstring tendinopathy. So probably more to come, honestly, on the podcast about collagen because I am personally interested in that topic as well. But let's shift to the next question, which is understanding turmeric. They understand that it's great anti-inflammatory. Do you recommend turmeric supplements? And if so, what dosage or just use it in cooking?
Yeah, I don't recommend turmeric as a supplement. I don't think I've ever recommended turmeric as a supplement, honestly, because there are so many other things that we can supplement with first that I think are going to give you more bang for your buck, like creatine, right? And there are tons of different foods that we can get that anti-inflammatory effect from, like your fruits, your veggies, your high antioxidant foods. Those like rich in color foods are going to give you that anti-inflammatory effect. So there are so many other things that we can do food wise before we turn to supplements, especially turmeric, where again the efficacy is mixed. Like, there are some research studies that support it, some that don't. And it's going to depend on the individual. But at the end of the day, I say no to the turmeric supplement. Let's just focus on those anti inflammatory foods like those leafy greens, those, bright reds, pinks, purples of those foods that are going to get you just a benefit that's also cheaper and doesn't require you to take another pill on top of everything else that you've got going on.
Yeah. Okay. So let's like, push the envelope here, Brooke. You ready for a little like spark lightning round?
I
Where I'm
am.
just gonna like rapid fire answers or questions to you. So let's go to this about Kava drink as a potential replacement for an evening glass of wine or beer. Do you agree or no?
I did look this up, full disclosure, right before we chatted today, and this isn't really lightning round answer. I just be careful with things like this. Make sure it's third party tested. It is an herb, and there's a lot of kava drinks that have a whole bunch of other stuff in them, which I'm not a huge fan of. And long term use of these things can be really hard on our liver. So just take caution with it. Again, make sure it's third party tested. If it works, but use caution, especially if you're somebody that's on other medications for things like blood pressure, thyroid, like pass it through your doctor first because it can decrease the efficacy of those. So yeah, just use caution with that.
All right. Is it true that all diets work the same when protein and calories are equated for?
No.
All right. Should women eat or fast before running? I've heard that fasting is okay for men, but women should eat before working out.
Never fasted for men or women.
Love it. Thoughts on eating before a run? Is it necessary?
Yes.
As I chuckle, as I ask the question, is it okay to run without eating when you run early at 5 or 6 in the morning?
Nope.
Okay. Top 3 go-to meals and snacks.
Right now, my top three: rice pudding for breakfast. A snack, I've been doing chomps beef sticks with like a piece of fruit. And oh my gosh, what's another meal that we've been doing lately that I've really been loving? Shrimp with pasta and asparagus.
Wow. Okay. All things I didn't think I was going to hear out of your mouth today. So I love it. I know that eggs are good for muscle repair building. Is it better to eat them before, the day before, several days, or after a hard workout? So I guess, yeah, the question is, should you be eating eggs for muscle repair and building before your hard workout or after?
Yeah, so don't overcomplicate this. Eggs are great anytime you can get them in. I think, protein after a workout is especially important. So if you're going to have eggs, have it after your workout.
All right. And if you are a runner who is looking for an individualized nutrition plan and want to nail down your hydration fueling strategy to prevent underfueling so you can run your best, then you can begin to work with Brooke one-on-one within our signature coaching program. If you've listened to episode 211 on the Healthy Runner podcast and you heard from one of the many clients that Brooke has helped in our program, you can check that episode out with Rachel if you want to kind of get a little more deep dive on what it looks like to work with Brooke. And if you want to apply to work with Brooke and our team, just simply, click the link that I have for you in the bio or go to learn.sparkhealthyrunner.com/coaching. Don't forget to get your download of your free nutrition blueprint by clicking the link in the show notes. Brooke, it's always fun. It's always great to catch up with you. Thank you so much for coming on to answer our listener submitted questions today.
Thanks, Dwayne.
And again, if you've gotten value, subscribe or follow the show for more running health tips. And if you enjoyed this information, then you'll surely like the next on how to eat like a runner. If you're listening to the podcast, then queue up episode 169 on the Healthy Runner podcast. And if you're watching the video version, then just click this video that I have for you next. Until next time.